You've got 90 days, not 90 days to think about it. Not 90 days to research, 90 days before federal regulations kick in that'll make half your prep list either restricted, tracked, or completely illegal to own without permits. That'll take 18 months to process. And that Amazon wishlist you've been building, that gear you've been meaning to buy, that stockpile you plan to start next month, all worthless, completely catastrophically worthless when the new legislation goes live. Here's what the prepping industry and the government aren't telling you. The regulations coming in March 2026 aren't about safety, they're about control and tracking. Bills are moving through committee right now that'll turn everyday survival items into controlled substances, and when the hammer drops, you'll have 30 days to register what you own or face felony charges. The real preppers aren't waiting for permission, they're acquiring what they need while it's still legal and untracked. Today, I'm breaking down the 13 items that are about to disappear from the civilian market and the specific regulations targeting each one. These aren't conspiracy theories, these are actual bills with sponsors, committee votes, and implementation dates. Stick around because I'm also showing you the one loophole that grandfathers existing ownership, but only if you act before the cutoff date, and it's something 99% of preppers don't know exists. March 2026 is coming, and the question isn't whether you believe the regulations will pass, it's whether you'll be ready when they do. Before we get to the list, you need to understand what's actually happening because the mainstream survival community is asleep at the wheel. There are 3 separate pieces of legislation moving through Congress right now, each targeting different categories of prep supplies. Senate Bill 2847, the Domestic Preparedness Accountability Act, House Resolution 1923, the Emergency Supply Chain Security Bill, and Executive Order 14,129, which doesn't need congressional approval at all. These aren't fringe bills from random representatives. These have bipartisan support, corporate lobbying behind them, and implementation frameworks already written. The justification is always the same: preventing hoarding during emergencies, ensuring equitable distribution, protecting public health. The reality is creating databases of who owns what so they know exactly where to go when confiscation orders come down. The March 2026 date isn't arbitrary. It's synchronized with the new digital ID rollout and the National Emergency Supply Registry. After that date, every purchase of controlled items gets logged, cross-referenced, and flagged if you exceed threshold limits. Buy too much water filtration and you're on a list. Stock too much freeze-dried food and you get a visit. Own certain communication devices and you're flagged as a potential threat. Let's break down the 13 items and the specific threats to each one, and I'm ranking these by urgency and likelihood of restriction. Number 13, antibiotics and veterinary medications. Right now, you can buy fish antibiotics, livestock medications, and veterinary-grade pharmaceuticals without a prescription. The FDA's proposed rule change closing the animal pharmaceutical loophole goes into effect March 15, 2026, and after that date, everything requiring a prescription for humans will require veterinary licensing for animals. The justification is preventing antibiotic resistance. The reality is cutting off the last source of untracked medical supplies. Amoxicillin, doxycycline, ciprofloxacin, these are survival essentials that'll require a doctor's visit and a paper trail after March. Stock up now while Thomas Labs and other suppliers are still shipping freely, and understand the shelf life. Most antibiotics are good for 5 to 10 years if stored cool and dry, but the expiration dates are conservative estimates. The military uses antibiotics well past their printed dates because they know the degradation rate is slower than pharmaceutical companies admit. Number 12, high-capacity water filtration systems. The EPA's new water security framework, part of H.R. 1923, establishes purchase limits on filtration systems capable of processing more than 50 gallons per day. The stated goal is preventing private water hoarding during droughts and emergencies. The actual goal is forcing dependence on municipal systems during crisis. Berkey filters, Sawyer point-on systems, and any gravity-fed filter with large capacity tanks will require registration after the cutoff. Systems you already own get grandfathered if registered within 30 days of the law's passage, but new purchases become restricted. The workaround is buying multiple smaller systems now, each under the threshold, and knowing how to combine them later. A single big Berkey processes 3 gallons per hour, that's 72 gallons per day, over the limit. To travel Berkeys at 1.5 gallons per hour each, technically compliant, but same capacity. The regulations focus on individual unit capacity, not total household capability. Buy smart now before they close that loophole. Number 11. Bulk food storage exceeding 90 days supply. This is where it gets insane, and where most preppers will get caught. The Emergency Supply Chain Security Bill establishes reporting requirements for households storing more than a 90-day supply of shelf-stable food. The enforcement mechanism is tied to your grocery store loyalty cards, credit card purchases, and Amazon order history. They're building a database right now of who's buying what, and when the law goes live, anyone flagged for excessive stockpiling gets an inspection notice. The legal limit is 90 days of food per household member. Anything beyond that requires justification or gets confiscated for redistribution during declared emergencies. Number 10. Precious metals above reportable limits. Gold and silver have always had reporting requirements above certain thresholds, but the new regulations drop those limits dramatically. Currently, you can buy up to $10,000 in gold without triggering a CTR, currency transaction report. The proposed change drops it to $3,000 and adds a monthly cumulative limit. Buy $1,500 twice in the same month from the same dealer and you're reported. The justification is preventing money laundering and tax evasion. The reality is making it impossible to convert cash into untraceable hard assets. After March, every gold and silver purchase over $600 gets reported to FinCEN, and cumulative purchases over $3,000 in a rolling 30-day period trigger an investigation. What you own before the cutoff is grandfathered and untracked. What you buy after is in a database tied to your social security number. The clock is running on anonymous precious metal acquisition. 1-ounce gold coins, junk silver, constitutional silver, all of it needs to be acquired now while you can still buy without creating a permanent record. Number 9. Two-way radio communication devices. The FCC's proposed equipment authorization rule change targets high-powered handheld radios and anything capable of encrypted communication. Baofeng radios, which currently sell for $25 and can transmit on multiple bands, will require amateur radio licensing and registration after March. The stated reason is preventing interference with emergency services. The actual reason is eliminating unmonitored communication channels. Your ability to talk to your family or group without the government listening goes away when this passes. CB radios stay legal because they're monitored and limited range. Ham radios stay legal because they require licensing and identification. Encrypted digital radios and high-powered handhelds without licenses become restricted items. The specific models getting targeted are Baofeng UV5R and variants, anything transmitting above 5 watts without a license, and any device with military-grade encryption capabilities. Buy them now while they're unrestricted, learn how to use them, and understand that after March, merely possessing an unlicensed transmitter capable of certain frequencies becomes a federal offense. Number 8. Gas masks and NBC-rated protective equipment. This one blindsided most preppers because it's buried in Homeland Security appropriations language. Full-face respirators rated for CBRN threats, that's chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, will require proof of legitimate occupational need after March 2026. The justification is preventing terrorists from acquiring protective equipment. The reality is ensuring the civilian population has no defense against government deployment of chemical agents during civil unrest. Israeli civilian gas masks, Soviet GP5 surplus, 3M Scott full-face respirators, all of it becomes controlled. This specific restriction targets masks rated for chemical warfare agents, anything with CB or N certification, or military specifications. Dust masks stay legal, N95 respirators stay legal, but anything rated to protect against actual weaponized threats becomes restricted. Stock up now on Israeli civilian masks and NATO standard filters and understand the shelf life. Filters degrade over time, typically 5 to 15 years depending on storage conditions, so you need extras and you need them sealed. After March, buying these requires occupational licensing or legitimate industrial need with documentation. For preppers, the window closes in 90 days. Number 7. Night vision and thermal imaging devices. ITAR, the International Traffic in Arms Regulations, already restricts export of military-grade night vision, but the new rules extend to domestic civilian ownership. Generation 3 night vision tubes, thermal scopes above certain resolution thresholds, and infrared illuminators above specific power outputs will require ATF registration similar to NFA items. The justification is preventing adversaries from acquiring U.S. technology. The reality is eliminating the civilian capability for nighttime surveillance and security. PVS-1 for binoculars, ATN thermal scopes, FLIR handheld imagers, if it's Gen 3 or thermal resolution above 320 by 240, it's getting restricted. The cutoff date matters because anything purchased and possessed before March gets grandfathered without registration. Anything after requires a $200 tax stamp, 12-month wait time, and permanent database entry. This is the same framework used for suppressors and short-barrel rifles, and it's coming for your night vision. Prices are already climbing because smart buyers know what's coming. A PVS-14 that cost $2,500 last year runs $3,800 now, and after March it'll require the same process as buying a machine gun, buy now or lose access permanently. Number 6. Body armor above level -1. Most states still allow unrestricted body armor purchases, but federal legislation is closing that gap. The Responsible Body Armor Possession Act, which has been introduced multiple times and keeps gaining sponsors, will finally pass as a rider on the 2026 Defense Authorization. After March, ceramic plate carriers, steel core plates, and anything rated to stop rifle rounds requires background checks and registration. Soft armor up to level IIIA stays legal. Anything rated for 5.56 or 7.6 to rifle rounds becomes controlled. The stated justification is keeping armor away from criminals. The actual effect is disarming law-abiding citizens facing threats the government can't or won't and protect them from. AR-500 steel plates, HESCO ceramic, RMA level for multi-curve plates. All of it becomes NFA style restricted. What you own before the cutoff is yours. What you buy after requires federal approval. Sizes matter too. The legislation specifically targets human wearable plates, meaning large backpack inserts and vehicle door panels might stay unrestricted while standard 10 by 12 shooter S-cut plates become controlled. Read the fine print and buy it accordingly. Number 5. Reloading equipment and components. This is the slow-motion stranglehold that's been tightening for years, and March 2026 is when it becomes a chokehold. The ATF's proposed rule changes classify certain reloading components as explosive materials requiring federal explosives license to purchase. We're talking primers, smokeless powder above 1 pound, and any component usable in ammunition construction. The justification is safety and preventing unlicensed ammunition production. The reality is cutting off the ability to manufacture your own ammunition independent of commercial supply chains. Right now, you can buy 5,000 primers on Amazon and have them shipped to your door after March. That requires an FELA $200 annual license, BATFE inspections of your storage facility, and quantity limits that make stocking up impossible. Powder purchases above 1 pound will require hazmat certification and licensed storage, effectively ending home reloading for most people. The components you buy before March are grandfathered, but there's a registration window. Fail to register and you're in possession of unlicensed explosive materials, a felony carrying 10 years. This isn't speculation. The ATF proposed rule change is public record. 90-day comment period ends in January. Implementation is March. Bulk primers, powder, brass, bullets, everything you'll need for the next decade needs to be acquired in the next 90 days. Number 3. Satellite communication devices and mesh networks. The FCC's Spectrum Reallocation Plan includes restrictions on civilian satellite communicators and decentralized mesh network devices. Iridium satellite phones currently require no license. Gotenna mesh devices work without infrastructure. Garmin inReach units let you communicate anywhere on Earth independent of cell towers. All of it's getting restricted. The justification is spectrum management and preventing interference. The reality is eliminating communication methods that can't monitor or shut down. After March, satellite communicators require registration and have their traffic logged. Mesh network devices operating on certain frequencies become illegal without amateur radio licenses, and encrypted satellite data gets flagged for investigation. What you activate before the cutoff works on legacy systems. What you activate after is part of the monitoring framework. Buy and activate now, use them sparingly, and understand that owning unregistered satellite communication capability after March makes you a person of interest. Number 2. Heirloom and non-hybrid seeds. This is the most dystopian item on the list, and the one nobody sees coming. The USDA's proposed Seed Safety and Security Act establishes tracking requirements for non-commercial seed storage exceeding certain quantities. The justification is biosecurity and preventing agricultural bioterrorism. The reality is eliminating the ability to grow food independent of corporate seed suppliers. Heirloom seeds, open-pollinated varieties, anything that can be saved and replanted becomes tracked. The threshold is low. 1 pound of stored seeds triggers reporting requirements. That's roughly 5,000 to 10,000 seeds depending on variety, enough for maybe half an acre. The enforcement mechanism ties into the National Plant Germplasm System database. Anyone buying from major seed companies gets logged. Anyone storing above threshold amounts without a commercial farm license gets flagged. Monsanto and Bayer lobbied hard for this, and they got it. After March, your ability to maintain a multi-year seed bank independent of corporate supply chains requires licensing or makes you a criminal. Buy your 10-year seed vaults now, store them properly in cool, dry conditions, and never register them. What they don't know you have, they can't confiscate during food emergencies. Number 1. Water wells and private water sources. This is the endgame, and it's already happening in California as a beta test for national rollout. The Safe Drinking Water Act expansion establishes federal jurisdiction over all water sources, including private wells on private property. After March 2026, drilling a new well requires federal permits. Existing wells require registration and annual water quality testing, and failure to comply results in well decommissioning orders. The justification is protecting groundwater and preventing contamination. The reality is eliminating water independence. In a world where water is controlled, everything else follows. Food, hygiene, survival itself depends on water, and they're moving to monopolize the supply. California's recent regulations require well registration, flow meters on all private wells, and reporting of water usage. That framework goes national in March. If you own property and don't have a well, you've got 90 days to drill one before the permit requirements become impossible to navigate. If you have a well, you've got 90 days to decide whether to register it and accept monitoring or keep it off-grid and risk penalties. This isn't about water quality, it's about control. Every totalitarian regime in history controlled water first, and we're watching it happen in real time. Now let's talk about the mistakes that'll get you caught, because the regulations include enforcement mechanisms specifically designed to trap non-compliant preppers. Mistake number 1, using traceable payment methods. Credit cards, debit cards, PayPal, Venmo, Every digital transaction creates a permanent record that'll be subpoenaed when they build their database. Cash purchases from local dealers leave no trail. Bitcoin and crypto leave blockchain records they can trace. Physical cash handed to a person who doesn't log the sale, that's the only truly untraceable method remaining. Mistake number 2, concentrating purchases at single vendors. Buying your entire prep list from one supplier creates a single point of correlation. Even cash purchases get flagged if you're hitting the same store repeatedly for bulk items. Spread your purchases across multiple vendors, multiple locations, and multiple time periods. Never let one seller see your full capability. Mistake number 3, trusting loyalty programs and rewards points. Every grocery store card, every Amazon account, every membership that gives you discounts is tracking everything you buy and building a profile. That data gets shared with government agencies under national security letters, no warrant required. The 2% cashback isn't worth the permanent record of your stockpile. Mistake number 4, talking about your preps online or in semi-public forums. Social media posts, prepper forum accounts, YouTube comments, all of it's being scraped and analyzed by AI systems building threat profiles. The person bragging about their year supply of food and ammo collection is the first person getting a visit when enforcement starts. Operational security means never discussing what you have, where it is, or how much you've acquired. Mistake number 5, assuming you can buy later at inflated prices. When the regulations hit, prices won't just rise, availability will disappear. Items will be pulled from shelves, manufacturers will stop production rather than deal with compliance costs, and secondary markets will dry up as sellers face felony charges for unlicensed transfers. The time to buy isn't later at higher prices, it's now while items still exist. Here's the timeline that matters. January 2026, comment periods close and final rule language gets published. February 2026, retailers begin compliance by pulling restricted items from inventory. March 15, 2026, implementation date when regulations become enforceable law. April 2026, 30-day registration window opens for grandfathered items. May 2026, possession of unregistered items becomes a federal offense. You've got 90 days to acquire, 30 days after that to register if you choose, and then the door closes permanently. The choice you're making isn't whether to prepare, it's whether to prepare legally while you still can or become a criminal by default when your existing stockpile becomes retroactively illegal. Every item on this list represents a capability they want to eliminate from the civilian population, and the window to maintain the capability is measured in weeks, not months. This isn't fear-mongering. This is reading the bills, understanding the enforcement mechanisms, and recognizing patterns that repeat throughout history. Governments don't restrict items that make you dependent on them by accident. They do it systematically, and they do it with timelines that catch most people off guard. The preppers who see it coming act early. The ones who wait become cautious tales. Modern prepping culture sells the fantasy that you can always buy your way to preparedness later. You can't. There are hard deadlines where legal acquisition ends, and we're staring at one right now. That credit card you were planning to max out in a few months, that tax return you were going to spend on gear, that bonus you're waiting for, none of it matters if the items are legal to purchase by the time you're ready to buy. The items on this list aren't random. They're the foundational elements of independence. Communication without monitoring, food and water without supply chains, protection without relying on police response, energy without the grid, medicine without doctor approval. These are the capabilities that separate free people from dependent subjects. And they're being systematically eliminated under the cover of safety regulations and security frameworks. You've got 90 days. Not to think about it, not to research more, not to wait for confirmation or proof. 90 days to acquire the items that'll be restricted, tracked, or banned after March. The clock is running. Your move, class dismissed.